to the Pursuit of Growth show, where we hold candid conversations with interesting individuals that we have encountered throughout our lifetime. You're sitting here today with myself, Sammy Gonzalez, and my good buddy and pal over on the next screen, Greg Brinkley. How are you doing tonight, Greg?
Man, I'm doing great, Sammy, and I'm very excited to introduce our very special guest for this episode, Eddie Thomaz. Eddie, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Man, we are thrilled to have you on. You've been a great friend to both Sammy and I for many years now, and you're also somebody that we just truly love talking to. And so I'm excited to share you and the way your mind works with the Pursuit of Growth audience. So, man, we're thrilled to have you on board today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a big fan of the show. So for you, for the people that watch the show, I've watched a couple of episodes. I watched the episode with Sammy, Greg, and Melissa.
Oh yeah.
And I watched the Sammy's in all the episodes. And and it's awesome. It's a great show. I love the key takeaways when you guys do the three takeaways, and I learn a lot from both of you as well as the guests too, right? So I want to already share some of the like the takeaways that I learned, and that way people can go back and watch some of the previous shows. Because again, I'm a fan. I have to pick up my daughter every day from school, and I listen to it with her. She loves it too. So she's a fan. She's looking forward to watching this as well. So a couple of like takeaways, right? Greg, the one about gratitude. So this was in the Melissa episode. Melissa was talking about gratitude, and you said something that just like blew my mind. It was, I feel grateful for my challenges. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, right? So it's easy for you to feel grateful for things that are good in your life, right? I have a beautiful home, a beautiful family, I'm healthy, I'm grateful for that. But Greg's perspective was, I'm grateful for my issues and my challenges. That was mind-blowing, because you can learn from those things and you can help other people. Right. I thought that was an awesome takeaway. Sammy, the other takeaway was from you. It's from your daughter when she says, I can't, you can't when you say you can't. That was one of my favorites too. It's all about mindset, right? If you have the right mindset, you can do everything. And then Melissa's, she said one that was, let me sit with this. I think both of you were praising her. She was really happy, and she didn't say anything. She just said, let me sit with this. So I want to sit with this right now with you guys, because I am ecstatic to be here. Both of you are amazing human beings. What you're doing with the Pursuit of Growth is amazing. Just helping other people is amazing. So for those of you that don't know, Sammy, Greg, and I have been in the same business group for the last 5 years, where we process a ton of issues, right? Problems come in and we process those problems. And every single month we learn new things, right? So Greg and Sammy are taking all these new things that they learned, they put it in their book, and they're teaching everybody. It's incredible. Like, hats off to both of you. It's incredible. Sorry, I'm going to stop geeking out because I am a fan of the show.
Well, true to the nature that Melissa said, I think I need to sit with that for a while too, because that was amazing. That's a high compliment to know that you're a fan, and that you not only like listen, but you hear, and then you're involving your daughter, and that you have your key takeaways. Like it's super special for you to say that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Eddie, I can tell you that what you just said is literally the ultimate goal that Sammy and I have for this show, is to be able to share the amazing people that we know and the people we have a chance to meet, and really focus on how our challenges, trials, opportunities, successes, how we can help each other, and try to do it in a fun way to where it's interesting, and hey, it's stuff that you can share with your family, friends, and whomever. So I'll say this, while the two of you are sitting on our previous conversation, I'm going to go ahead and provide Eddie's bio so that our listeners know a little bit more about who this guy really is. And again, I think they're going to be very, very excited as we continue this conversation. But I love first and foremost that Eddie considers himself a husband, father, musician, pizza lover. We're going to get into that.
Yes, we are.
And an IT guy. He has 22 years of experience in leadership roles in the IT service and software development world. He's managed multiple global focused platforms and operation efficiencies. He's directly involved in bringing over $60 million in total contract revenue and cost reductions. He's had leadership roles with organizations with over 150 direct reports. And for any of us that have managed teams of even 2 or 3 people, imagine 150 plus over the course of your career and in many shapes and sizes. He has a bachelor's degree in IT, a master's degree in HR, and an MBA in information systems. And then if that's not enough, Eddie is proficient in 3 languages, English, Portuguese, and Spanish. So, wow, Eddie, that's a heck of an introduction. And once again, thank you for being here, man.
I didn't want to add all that to the introduction, by the way. I just wanted to do the pizza thing, and that would be.
The thing that I loved, in addition to the pizza comment, was the fact that you mentioned right off the bat of your love for music. And I think one of the key areas of life that you, myself, and Sammy really bonded on over the last 5 years is our love for music. And so when you agreed to come on the show, we said, we've got to start off and we've got to talk about our love for music with Eddie. So here's your first question, because we're just going to dive right into the show. What was the first album or song that you recall that made you fall in love with music?
So this is easy, because Greg, we had this conversation once upon a time, and it was a song that just blew my mind the very first time I heard it. But it's not my favorite song. It was the one that made me kind of fall in love with music, and then I expanded upon that, right? So it's the 90s song, the number one, Smells Like Teen Spirit from Nirvana. It is, I remember I was in a carnival in bumper cars, driving little bumper cars, and that song came on, and just something happened with my brain immediately that I'm like, this is my identity. This is me. I love this. So that was kind of what made me fall in love with music. And then the next level up, Shirab Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins. Ever heard this song? Mm-hmm. So Shirab Rock is the first song in Siamese Dream, their album from 1993. My favorite album of all time. It's still my favorite album. Read the story of the album, the way that it was made. There was all sorts of conflict within the band, the way that they recorded all the guitars. And it's the same producer that made Nirvana's Nevermind. It's the same producer that made Siamese Dream by the Smashing Pumpkins. So when he's got like 17 guitars layered on each other. So when that guitar sound hit my head, it just hypnotized me for the rest of my life. And I've been searching for that sound ever since I heard Shirab Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins.
That is a great album, because that's the double album, right?
No, it's before. It's
right
before the
okay.
double album. Yeah, so this is before. The double album is called Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. 1995 is when they released that one. I'm a big fan of the Smashing Pumpkins. That's the coolest thing too, right? So because of my association with music and how much I love music and how I identify with the Smashing Pumpkins, for example, people remember me and call me and say, hey, I heard the Smashing Pumpkins, I remembered you. Just like every time now that I listen to Metallica, I remember Sammy.
Yeah.
Sammy's favorite band.
That's right. And you know, it's funny, you talk about that sound that just kind of picked you up and took you on your musical journey. That was, for me, believe it or not, when I was younger, my family really listened to, when we drove around, we listened to a lot of the typical 80s pop, that was what was on there. My parents loved Chicago and they loved all that kind of stuff. But I'll never forget, my uncle gave me one of my first albums. I don't even know if it was a CD, but it was Guns N' Roses. Use Your
Appetite for
Illusion.
Destruction, right?
It was
1988.
Appetite for Destruction. Yeah, it was the Forbidden album cover, if you remember that. It was a little
Ooh.
cassette tape, and it was like folded out to this very obscene scene that was like
Mhm.
forbidden and illegal and all that. And I just thought metal. Like I was like in my head, that was like, what is this? And so I love that that's where you expanded from and moved on, because that's kind of like you mentioned, you started to expand that sound. I've been a rock and metal guy for as long as I've known.
You know, Eddie, it's interesting that you mentioned you remember the time and place when you first heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit."
I think you talked about it too. You too, right?
Yeah, and so I was actually on a bus about to go play a seventh grade basketball game, and one of my teammates, a guy named Toby Anderson, had like a portable Walkman with like speakers that you could actually listen to, where you could plug into the headphone jack and play it out. And he put that song on, and every single one of us on the bus just started doing like the head nod and
Yeah.
just started like head banging. And then the thing was, for the rest of the trip there and the rest of the trip back, we all were just doing the hello, hello, hello. And that was just our thing. And I think for me, because that song just blew up everywhere, and it really became a pop song, right? And for living in a small town in Central Texas, well, I was aware of the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Metallica, and I had Guns N' Roses albums. The rock and roll that I was being inundated with were like the hair bands, right? Your Poisons, your Def Leppards, and there's a place for that. But then when Nirvana came, it was just such a explosion that was in the direct opposition of what the poppy hairband music was, that, like you, I was like, what is
It
this?
changed everything. Like it just
did.
it literally just changed everything. Yeah, until today, people are trying to copy what they did.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next big shift in music, you know, it's going to happen. And I feel like we're getting closer and closer to something that's going to come through and just blow the doors down again.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing to see like even some of the older bands, you know, ones from the 90s that are still around, like the Foo Fighters. They just released a new album. Still good, you know,
It's a
still.
great album. I was
Yeah.
listening to it. Yeah, it's Medicine at Midnight, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, great album. It's very poppy though. It's a little bit different, but it's still very good. It's rock and roll, right? I think the Foo Fighters never lost kind of that rock and roll feeling. They're consistent too. I love that band, by the way. So that's I have a Foo Fighters tattoo.
Really?
And the reason I have a Foo Fighters tattoo is not because I absolutely love the Foo Fighters. The reason I have it is because of just change and evolution. So if you think about it, right, you have David Grohl, who was the drummer for Foo Fighters, for Nirvana,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Things happened with Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain was gone. That was massive blow. That sucked for all of music. And David Grohl sat in his house and didn't do anything. He said, I'm quitting. I'm not doing anything anymore. So this was in 1994, 1995. And he recorded their very first album in his house. He said, I'm just going to do everything. I'm going to record every single instrument and just
Amazing.
do it by myself. And today, Foo Fighters, I think if you look at popularity, they're up there, right? One of the number one rock bands. They just got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think this is news too. So it's the reason I have this tattoo is just because I loved Nirvana, and then it just evolved into something that's way bigger and not better, but just it continued to grow. Make sense?
Just different. It does make sense. And I also think one of the cool things about the Foo Fighters, you alluded to this, they've always kept their roots on just really good rock and roll music with influence of punk and metal and thrash and whatever it might be. But they just had a consistency that you felt like you could always count on them to deliver a great album. And then for anyone that's been fortunate enough to go and see them live in concert,
Oh, incredible.
I mean, it is such an incredible show. They make you feel like whatever amount of money you paid for that ticket, that it was their responsibility to make sure that you left feeling like you had value for the time that you just spent with them. And I think just from what we've learned just through media and interviews and just observing this band over the last, almost 30 years, is they all just seem like really good dudes, especially Dave Grohl, that like they're grateful for being musicians, right? They're grateful they get to play music.
Yeah, I have a story. So I have a brother that lives in Los Angeles, and he's been out there for the last 15 years, runs into celebrities all the time. So he used to park cars. So one day he's waiting to park a car, a BMW shows up, and out of the BMW comes out David Grohl.
Wow.
And my brother is parking David Grohl's car, and of course he's gonna say something. He's like, "Hey, my brother loves your band." Nicest guy ever. Like, my brother said he was the nicest guy. He talked to him about the first album. So what I just told you, how he was recording in his house, he told my brother that. He didn't have to take the time to do that, but he took the time to talk to my brother and tell him that. It was, they're awesome human beings, at least from what we hear.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
And I've always really appreciated too their comical nature of like not taking themselves too seriously. I think it was about maybe 2-3 months ago now, they did a live stream performance, and it was just them on a stage, you know, COVID protocols and all that. But man, they were just like having fun. And like, it was just like they were in a garage, you know, just having fun. And that's what I've always appreciated about them too. Cause you know, you get some bands that are a little more, you know, into themselves, maybe we can say, but these guys seem like they are just that genuine. But
that reminds me, do you remember, and this is going to date us, but back in like the late 90s when they started putting out their first videos, they were all like comedy. So Dave Grohl was like one of the first persons to dress up as a girl.
Yeah.
And they had the Mentos, which I don't think people probably even remember what Mentos is anymore, but the Mentos candy had a popular commercial, and they just always spoofed on that, which I thought was so funny.
It was Big Me. It was a video for Big Me.
It was Big Me. Yes, they made fun of a whole bunch of commercials, and then their #1 song, right, Everlong, the one that blew up. If you watch that video, it's just pure comedy. It's they're in the woods, and you got the drummer dressed as David Grohl's wife. His hand just increases. It's fun.
I've got to share one more. Real quick, Eddie, I got to share a funny Foo story. Years ago, Sammy and I actually went to go see them for the first time in Tulsa. And so we took we flew up to, I think it was the Bank of America Stadium up there to watch them. And when we arrived at the stadium, we were doing a different podcast at the time. This is like 10, 15 years ago. And we had a handheld recorder. And so we started telling people that we were local radio personalities and that we were live on the radio, even though we had a handheld recorder. We literally had groups of people around us as we were interviewing them about what it meant to be at the Foo Fighters show, and then telling people that we were going to give away like backstage passes and stuff. And we're just totally messing with these people. We have like this crew of people around us. Well, after we finished that whole nonsense, and we still to this day have this on tape somewhere. We need to go back and find it, Sammy. But we actually go into the concert, and we were down on the arena floor, and we were probably maybe like 30 yards from the stage, maybe even closer to that. But it was the final song, and they started playing Everlong. And I looked at Sammy, and Sammy at a concert is in very, very good shape because he's 6'5", so he sees over everybody. Well, I'm at the total opposite of that totem pole. I'm 5'5". So I'm having to find consistently like the little angles between bodies so I can see the best shots. And I just look at Sammy and I was like, dude, I'm going front row. And within about 30 seconds, I made my way up to the front of the stage, and I literally had my elbows on the stage as I'm looking up at Dave Grohl playing Everlong right in front of me. And I swear at one time he looked down and like gave me a wink. I'm pretty sure he was thinking about asking me to get on stage and play guitar with him.
Nice.
But I think we just ran out of songs, so it didn't happen. But that was my closest to be able to get to Dave Grohl, to see him in action, and one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Nice. When you talk about the front row, I always try to squeeze into the front row. Either I get there early or I squeeze into the front row. In concerts, I've always liked going to concerts by myself, just because you can do these things, right? If you're with somebody else, you lose them. Oh no, I lost my friend, I lost my wife, I lost my girlfriend, right? Typically I try to go by myself. So Metallica in Brazil, Sammy, I squeezed myself into probably the second row, not the front row. And we were so compact. I'm not even kidding. I could lift both of my legs up and I wouldn't fall just because
Wow.
we were that squished. So instead of me trying to escape towards like the front and kind of like jump over people, I turned around and I started walking backwards and almost passed out. That was the first time in my life that I almost passed out and saw just yellow lights in front of me.
Oh no.
Just because of the heat. Yeah. Go
Wow.
Metallica. But it was an awesome concert. And Kirk threw a pick. It hit my finger.
Oh no.
But then it fell on the ground.
Oh no.
I've never been that close. The closest I've ever gotten to, I mean, I think I've seen Metallica 7, 8 times now.
Wow.
Yeah, by far most of anyone else. But the closest I ever got to a pick was they were walking off out at the American Airlines Center. They were walking in the tunnel that went underneath, and I was in the stands. And they had thrown a couple picks, and as they were walking off, they threw one. It hit someone else's hand, and then one of the security guards looked down because it had fallen all the way down, and he looked up and he looked right at me, and he went to throw it, and I was like, "Oh, here it is!" And he goes, "Whew!" And it literally like stuck to his finger, did a 90-degree angle, and I was like, "No!" But that was it. That was my only shot at glory.
Well, Eddie, speaking of Brazil,
Mhm.
this is where you grew up.
Yeah.
What type of music did you listen to when you were younger, pre-Nirvana? What would we have found Eddie listening to?
Oh, wow. I think the very first thing that I liked was Vanilla Ice. Yeah, it was Vanilla Ice, and then after that, no joke, it was Guns N' Roses. So Appetite for Destruction was my second album. Hysteria by Def Leppard. That's
Okay.
another great album. I think that's how I found my love for rock and roll. Right, I kind of liked Vanilla Ice at the time because super popular, everybody likes them, and then all of a sudden, I found a CD in the middle of my dad's CDs, and it was Def Leppard Hysteria. This is great. I love rock and roll. This is me. This is what I like.
You know,
What?
Eddie, and I should give Def Leppard some credit because when I first heard Pour Some Sugar on Me,
Oh yeah, that was my first one.
Yep.
that song had a very similar impact on me that Smells Like Teen Spirit did. It's just I was so much younger that it didn't affect my life as much in terms of what happened when
Same.
I was a teenager. But that song, when I first heard it, was just like,
Yeah, I think I was 8, 9 years old, so it didn't make a difference, right? But that, like, when your teenage years, when you listen to good music, that's when you're influenced the most. So that's why, like, Nirvana was right when I was 13, 14 years old.
yeah.
Oh yeah, when it was all melding together, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So if you had to, what was your first concert that you saw?
Oh, I actually just posted about this. So my very first concert was a metal concert. It was Dream Theater,
Mm.
amazing band for those of you that don't know Dream Theater. Very, very talented musicians. Megadeth, which is one of my favorite bands today too. Love Megadeth, and Slayer.
Nice.
Nice.
And it was the Monsters of Rock in Sao
Yeah.
Paulo, Brazil, 1995. I was 15 years old. Soccer stadium. It was great. Like I was a metalhead as a 16-year-old. Just black t-shirts. I still do that. Long hair, black t-shirts and long hair. Maybe I'm still a metalhead.
I can't believe you were there. That's amazing because I've watched clips from that and I've heard
Yeah.
stories from that, and that was always a big thing, right? Because it was such a exotic location. It's like, monsters of rock, and like I think every documentary, every rock documentary, like mentions that as like a mecca. So that's amazing that you got to go to
Sammy,
that
what was
show.
your first concert?
Gosh, we've gone over this before a long time ago, and I'm sure that I went to like a smaller one here or there, but it might have been Metallica. Um, yeah, I think it was a Metallica show, and we drove to Houston, and I went with my dad, my uncle, and my cousin. And the whole way up there, we listened to Metallica.
Nice.
Go in
That's
there.
how you do it, by the way.
Uh-huh.
That's how you do it if you're going
Yep.
to a concert.
We listen all the way up there, and I have a rule. Well, this rule changed later, but I had a rule. It was like I always had to buy the official concert T-shirt. Doesn't matter how expensive it's going to be. So my whole family, we bought, or my cousins and my dad, we all bought shirts. So of course I go in the go in the bathroom, change my shirt. Uncle changed his shirt. My cousin changed his shirt. My dad slips it on right over his polo. So he had his Metallica. But yeah, I think it was Metallica. I don't remember who else was there. I'd have to go back and look though.
What year was this? Do you remember? I'm trying to remember like the Metallica phase that you were in. If it's like 1995, it's Load. 1992, 3, that's the Black Album, right?
It was Black Album.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was the 99, I think it was 91, 92-ish area. And I've gone back and looked at it before in the past too, to see who played with them. And then if you go to setlist.fm, you can go back to concerts. Cool. Yep. And then like look at all of them.
I cheat, by the way. So setlist.fm, whenever I go to a concert, it's going to show the set list of the songs that that band is playing. And I'm always, should I look? Should I not look? And I always end up looking. And
look.
Like, I know what the next song is going to be. I just know.
I do the same thing.
I'm the opposite. I want to be surprised. I don't want to see it.
That's how my wife is. She's like, why are you looking? Just be surprised. Enjoy.
And see, my thing is I want to know so that I can just get hyped. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this transition. I want to see how they blend it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the two of you definitely rocked out for your first concert experience. My first experience, I think I was either 5 or 6 years old. And I went with my family to see Kenny Rogers, Eddie Rabbit, and Crystal Gale. So nice. I went to go see The Gambler. And at the time, I was a big Kenny Rogers fan. I loved The Gambler. And there was a song called Love Will Turn You Around. That was the theme song from a movie called Six Pack, which Kenny Rogers was the lead actor as a like washed out NASCAR driver that came back to like win a race. And that was before I think they had PG-13. So it was a PG movie. But my parents told me when they took me to see it, they were like, we just took Greg to see his first rated R movie because there was so much cussing in it. And so that was my favorite song. But unfortunately, Kenny, he came on late. He was the headliner. And so he showed about like 9:30. And I passed out in my seat and fell asleep and missed the whole show. And I woke up on my dad's shoulders leaving the arena. And to this day, I'm like, you couldn't wake me up to see like at least a couple of my favorite songs. And they were like, dude, you were out cold. So first concert, slept through it.
I'm still in shock that you went to Monsters of Rock. I was just like,
oh, dude, I have it. So I went to Rock in Rio in 2012. 220,000 people. It was insane. And again, I was in the front row for 12 hours. So imagine just being there's a picture of me. I'll try to find this picture. I'm squished for 12 hours. And this was the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Silverchair, and Deftones, and a whole bunch of Brazilian bands. But those are the 3 bands that I went to see.
Oh, man. Those 3 bands right there. Just
yeah, it was incredible.
How did you get to the front row of that many people?
212,000 people.
It was a lot of people. It was crazy.
So like, how do you get to the front? Like, how do you get there so early? Did you just have to be like a ninja?
Yeah, so I lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Sao Paulo is about 15 hours away from Rio. So I got there the night before, and it was like a day before, 24 hours before the concert, I was already in line, just laying down on the ground. It's muddy everywhere. There's no pillows. I remember that. I had a bag of chips and said, this is my meal for the next 36 hours. I have a bag of chips and that's it.
Were you there by yourself?
I was there with a friend. So I broke my own rule, right? Go by yourself. And then, no, I was there with one of my best friends. He was actually in a band with me. My very, very first band. It's called The Nightmare.
Oh, that's it.
He played bass, and we were there. I used to sing, and we used to play a lot of Metallica covers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a great first band name, Nightmare.
Nightmare. I love. Yeah, it was my favorite. One of my favorites. I was 15 years old, and back in Brazil, I used to rent CDs. So there was a store that was called the CD Factory. And I would go over there and rent music, right? And one day there was on the wall, musicians looking for other musicians, right? And I met and they're still some of my best friends until today. Alan, who played bass, and Andre, he's incredible. If you add links to this thing, like, you have to watch this kid play. So the most incredible guitar player I've ever seen in my life, I met when I was 15 years old. He was 15 years old too. And I asked him, how are you so incredible at playing guitar? Like, you're amazing. He said, I practice 8 hours a day.
Wow.
That's until today, he's a musician and he teaches people. And if you watch his videos playing guitar, mind blowing. It is insane.
What's his name? Because I will definitely link out if he's got a website, if he's got stuff, I'll definitely put that in the notes.
I'll find it. It's Andre.
Nice.
Yeah, he did the other day. He had race cars on the television, and he would pretend that the guitar was a race car. And he did like Lady Gaga metal songs. He's still very, very, very good.
So growing up in Brazil, when you were there and you started to have these musical influences and really your love and passion for music kicked off, what were some of the things that you did to really start to learn more? Did you take classes? Did you just like pick it up on your own? And what are some of the instruments that you play?
Yeah, so I started young. My story is a little bit different. So I was born in Brazil. When when I was 8 years old, my parents moved to the United States. I went back to Brazil when I was 13, 14. So my childhood years were in Stamford, Connecticut. And then my teenage years were back in Brazil, right? And then I moved back to the States when I was 24, 25 years old, right? So it was a little bit of back and forth. So spending my childhood here, I had American influences in everything that I've ever done, right? Just because that's how my brain conceptualized everything, right? I was an American. So when I moved back to Brazil, I barely spoke Portuguese. I spoke Portuguese and could understand it, but it was really difficult, right? I didn't know how to read or write. That was the worst because I was plopped into just high school, and I didn't know how to read or write in high school. Wow. So I had to learn super quick. It was a big, big, big culture shock, right? And being down there just like here, there's popular music. Here, there's Brazilian popular music over there. And I never identified myself with the Brazilian popular music. So I was always kind of different because I liked like the trends that were happening here in the States, but I was in Brazil. Right. And at that age too, I think I told you, I was 16 years old, metalhead, right? I used to wear black t-shirts. So while people are at the carnival, right? I was like, I hate this. I don't like it. Like, I hate it. And today I have so much appreciation for it. It's the growth, right? I hated it at the time so very, 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 very much. But now I listen to it and it's beautiful. Like,
what did you hate about it at the time?
Go ahead.
What did you hate about it at the time?
I don't know. Listen to it. Samba, pagode. It's just very different from the music that we have here in the United States. It's very, very, very. And then they have their own version of funk. Look up Brazilian funk, and then tell me if you like those songs.
And I love funk. So I'll see.
Yeah.
I've created on Spotify a funk instrumental playlist that I listen to when I study or even when I'm driving. So there's no words. It's just funk music, and it helps me, kind of like EDM. It just helps me focus and like really tune into stuff. So Eddie, I'm gonna take you up on that. I'm gonna download some Brazilian funk, and I'll report back on my takeaway.
Thank you.
Do you use Spotify, Eddie?
I don't. I'm still old school that I'm paying iTunes 99 cents per song still. That's the other thing about my playlist. So I have 300 songs that I listen to, and I just really enjoy those songs. I do listen to new things occasionally, but for something to make it to my phone, I have to purchase it. That's why I still use iTunes, right? when I was on Spotify, and I use Spotify a little bit, it's a lot, right? It's so many different options, and it's awesome for exploring, right? But I'm kind of set in my favorite songs, and every once in a while, a new song will come in. I love this song, buy it, add it to my 300 song list.
Nice.
That's awesome. I was going to say, Greg, when you make that playlist, you'll have to share it. And then that way we can, maybe we can even link it so that people can go on there and listen to it.
Well, Sammy and I have been talking behind the scenes, a little bit of TPG, the Pursuit of Growth show, background information about maybe exploring a new theme song for the intro. Maybe we throw down some Brazilian funk to get things started. I guess we'll have to listen to it first. But so Eddie, here's a question that I wanted to ask you as a person that doesn't just enjoy music, but you know your music, and you can quote albums, you remember tour years, you just have a lot of information about music. And this is one of those discussions that's kind of like who's the best baseball player of all time. At the end of the day, there's no definitive answer. However, I think it's a fun conversation, and I think that I can actually make a good point for what I believe is the best decade of rock and roll. And I'm curious, without giving you any prompts,
it's got to be the 90s.
Did the decade come to your mind? Do you think it's the 90s?
Yeah, it's got to be the 90s. If you can talk me out of the 90s, I'm curious to hear.
Well, I'll let you go first. Share a little bit about why you think the 90s is the best decade of rock and roll.
It was so simple. It was guitar, bass, and drums, and I love here's so much aggression in a song, but here's so much softness in the same song. And that was everything that happened throughout the 90s. I like the early 2000s too. Mm-hmm. So bands like Linkin Park, I had back in Brazil, I had a Linkin Park cover band, and I did be part of Chester. So I sang in that band, and we actually did well. So back in Brazil, the big bands, they don't go down there. It's very, very rare. That's why when they go, they fill up soccer stadiums, because they'll go and then 4 years later they'll come back. Right. So Pearl Jam, for example, they go to Brazil, they play 3 nights, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they fill up the soccer stadium every single night. It's crazy.
Well, I know a lot of people, when this question gets posed, tend to talk about the 60s, and they list just a lot of the amazing bands and just the influence that it had in our world and pop culture. But Eddie, I believe you're exactly right.
Okay, good.
The 90s is the greatest decade of music for everything that you just mentioned. But also, I think what was unique is rock and roll really took its footstep forward as being like the premier music in the music industry. So it got a lot of pop play. I think with MTV really growing into its own, there was just so much exposure to be able to see videos. But you just had so many good bands, from like Weezer to the Foo Fighters to, even just depending on your style of music, the Dave Matthews Band, Bush. I mean, I could just go over and over and over and listing bands, but you also had an interesting trend happen. I think it was the first time that the really good bands from the 80s stayed relevant throughout the 90s, like your Metallicas and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and those type of bands. And so you just had so many good bands putting out new music. And then towards the late 90s, you started getting bands like Incubus, and of course Pearl Jam, and the whole grunge movement was getting big. It's just, I feel like there's no comparison. There was just so much good music. Smashing Pumpkins, Sublime, which is one of my all-time favorites, and a band that really changed, the way that I viewed music. And I could just go on and on and on. So that is my stake for claiming that the 90s is the best decade of rock. But Sammy, what do you think?
No, I have to agree. It's exactly because maybe that genre and those styles of music, there's something about even anyone like, for some behind the scenes, we've all kind of jammed a little bit together in the past, but just to hear like the popping and hissing and crackling of like plugging in an amp into a guitar just kind of makes your hair stand up a little bit, like when you just ring out that first chord. And so I think that's the thing, it's so unique, and it goes with the angst, it goes with that driving force of the music too. It really inspires me in a lot of what I do. And you know, I think there was even a time when I was like almost bashful that I liked like the crazy rock. You know, it was growing up in South Texas. I mean, there was a lot of Tejano music. There was a lot of pop. We didn't really have a rap scene until like Snoop Dogg came on the scene and that kind of stuff, and then Tupac obviously in that. But we had a huge base of just rock and roll. I mean, Deftones were huge. I mean, and if for people that don't know Deftones, they'll blow your mind. Tool.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, and you've seen Deftones, right? You said that earlier.
Deftones is another just amazing band. The bass drum, listen to just the bass drum. That's one of my favorite things. But two, it goes back to the hardness and softness, right? The waves. So the guitars and the drums and bass are just pure metal, just like in your face. And then his voice, I think his name's Chino Moreno, right? Yeah. Chino's voice is beautiful.
Yep.
Like and he's singing in a really soft voice. Sometimes he does it screaming, but Deftones, if you haven't heard of the Deftones, that's one of the takeaways.
For sure. I think there was we've talked about this in the past too, that there's so many bands from that era, the 90s era. And then Eddie, I'll let you take it away on your thoughts on the 90s, but the lasting impact, like we just mentioned, and the fact of the relevancy and the fact that those songs still to this day, when you hear them, you don't get tired of hearing them. Like I don't, at least. Whereas you can hear some older 80s songs, like, okay, that's like super dated.
It's real dated, right?
But it's fun and nostalgic. But then these, it's just like, man, these, I heard these yesterday and they were still good, So what about you, Eddie? What about the 90s to you really stands out on the music, outside of what all the answers we just gave you?
all the answers that
we stole all the good ones.
It was, I think it was my teenage years too, right? That's when you're most influenced. And that's when I just started listening and loving music and started playing music, right? The first song that I ever played on the guitar was Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. And the second song was Come As You Are by Nirvana. And then Green Day. That's how I fell in love with music, and that's what I play until today. So if I grab a guitar, there's 40 different songs from the 90s, and I made my little list that I can play on the guitar because it's what I liked. And again, just a little bit of the early 2000s, right? I think Incubus was still like late 90s, early 2000s. That's another one of my favorite bands. Yeah, Linkin Park. I like Limp Bizkit too. I thought they were super cool.
You know what? I saw Limp Bizkit and Deftones together at a show, and so that was a pretty epic experience. But speaking of bands, Eddie, so you'd mentioned some of the bands that you played in. I'd love to hear more about Nightmare, your very first band, and then talk to us a little bit about how some of your bands progressed, and then even here in the States, in Dallas, you played in a band that actually played at some really cool venues here in Deep Ellum, which is the kind of the live music, I guess, pinpoint of Dallas. But I'd love to hear just your journey and what it took to become a band member and what it was like to play in front of crowds.
Yeah, so playing in front of crowds was my favorite. For some reason, I am an introvert. Right. So it's difficult for me to do public speaking, and it's difficult for me to be in big groups because it just takes a lot of my energy. But for some reason, when I was on stage, I was never scared. So I was scared for maybe 2 seconds. Right. I remember my very first concert. I was 16 years old. It wasn't even Nightmare. It was 0 Hour. It was just a band called 0 Hour. It was influenced by the Smashing Pumpkins. It was my high school band. And the first song that we were going to play was Smoke on the Water, which is the easiest song ever. And I remember being scared for 2 seconds. And then all of a sudden I got the first 2 notes right, never scared again. So I've played lots of concerts, and I'll talk about some of the bands too, but I've played for like 2,000, 6,000 people, this crazy stuff.
That's awesome.
So I started with Nightmare, right? We talked a little bit about that and how I met those guys. When I moved to Dallas, I was briefly in a band called Spookeasy. I didn't really get along with them. So I got kicked out of the band. So that wasn't fun.
Dude,
And then
that's a true rock and roll story, man. You got to get kicked out of a band.
Right.
you gotta. I have two of those. I got kicked out twice. So that was one. And then the other was called With These Words. So With These Words had a following already. This was great, right? They had a following. A lot of people liked them. They were back in MySpace days.
Okay.
They had a lot of fans. And the best part about this was we would show up at concerts to play and people would just show up. They had fans. They had fans show up every single concert. And sometimes it was the same people. We would have 100, 200 people just show up. And I was just super lucky to be a part of that. I was a part of that band for a few years. They were a really tight family too. So you had the drummer who was married to the lead singer, and then they actually got separated. You had the guitar player who was brothers with the lead singer, and then you had the other guitar player who was roommates with the lead singer. And just in the middle of this big family was me, right?
Yeah. And
So
you played bass, right?
And I played bass for them, yes. So I played bass for them. And for some reason, sometimes we were very dysfunctional. We would get into fights, and I'm of the mindset that I don't get into fights. So I would just stay out of it. But like chairs flying, doors slamming.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, it's pure rock. It was pure rock and roll. And for some reason, when the five of us got together, I didn't believe the sound that was coming out, right? So my whole life it was kind of novice bands, but now this was a professional band. They had albums out, they had fans, they did Vans Warped Tour when I joined them. And then when I joined them, we opened for the Smashing Pumpkins. So that was a dream come true for me. I got to meet Billy Corgan. I got to hang out with the folks from Smashing Pumpkins. The same concert had Cage the Elephant and Jimmy Eat World. I got to meet all those guys, hang out with those guys, and it was awesome. Like
Sammy,
it was,
did you know
it was
this?
really fun.
Dude, that's
Mine's
incredible.
blown.
All right, keep going, man. That's like we've known you for 5 years and never once have you
Oh,
said
you didn't,
yes.
you didn't know this story?
No.
I've opened for the Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay. Yeah. So, and just going back to kind of the challenges that we had towards the end, right? For me personally, it was challenging just because I had a young child and a wife, and I had to rehearse once a week at least, and then every weekend we were out, right? So imagine, right, being outside and doing all this and living kind of like the rock and roll lifestyle, right? But still maintaining a family. It was challenging. It wasn't easy, right? So towards the end, when we all decided that we were going to break up, it was somewhat of a relief for me. It was a good feeling just because I could focus more on my family.
And you were working full time during this
I was
process,
working
right?
full time too.
Wow.
That was challenging.
So what bands, have there been any bands since?
Yes, two since. So right after that band, we broke up and I stayed at home for a little bit, said, I don't want to do this. And of course, like there's that itch. I want to do it again. So started a smaller band. I wanted to keep it small, just 3 people. It's called Death Maybe. Really great songs too, but that's the other one that I got kicked out of because
You started it and then you got kicked out of it?
yes, I got kicked out of this one because I didn't know how to use a metronome. Yeah, I like the groove, man. I always saw it as something fun, and I always saw it as something that's not like mathematical. You know, like Sammy said, those bands that they care too much about themselves. I never wanted to do that. I just wanted to have fun. Like being on stage was the most fun for me, right? And now I actually I'm recording, so it's kind of in the down low. I haven't told anybody yet. I'm recording. I'm recording with a friend of mine, and he's really good. So he plays bass. His name is Jared, And going back to like the nightmare theme, our new band is called the Neon Nightmares.
Nice.
Nice.
We recorded 12 songs, at least the instrumental parts of the song. We're still kind of working through a COVID hit, and then we just stopped, right? Kind of writer's block too, I think, for both of us. But we have an album that's coming out, and hopefully soon, and people get to hear it, and it's cool stuff. Like I'm really happy with it. Like all the stuff.
Where are you playing? Are you playing different instruments on the album? Did you write much of it?
Guitar and drums, and Jared and I wrote like 50-50.
Okay.
And I'm doing guitar in the drums too. So that was the other thing too, right? I got kicked out of my first band. I got kicked out because I didn't know how to use the metronome. So I said, I'm going to learn how to play drums now. So I spent the last 4 years learning how to play drums. So now I only play with the metronome.
So let me ask you this: your buddy from growing up practiced 8 hours a day to learn how to become an amazing rock god.
Yeah.
When you were learning to play guitar, or I mean to play drums, because I can't tell you how many people I know that are like, man, one day I'm going to learn how to play piano, or one day I'm going to learn how to play drums, or I'm going to learn how to play guitar. Share quickly, just what was your process and how did you go about doing that? Also knowing that you have a wife that you live with that has to hear that.
Yes. So multifaceted process. So I did it the wrong way, but I think it's the right way.
Okay.
So I am right-handed. I flipped my drums as if I were left-handed. And I learned how to play drums that way. I thought, man, it's a brand new instrument for me. Let me try this the most difficult way possible, right? Because I'm right-handed. I'm going to do everything with the left part of my body. So I learned that way. And then I transitioned to the right side of my body, which was super easy afterwards, right? I learned it the hard way. The wife thing, that was critical too, because my drums can get super loud. So now I have a drum set and an electronic drum set, so I can play with my headset on.
That is one skill set that I always appreciate when I see somebody on the drums that can actually play, because I know how difficult it actually is. Because I mean, it's arms and legs, feet. It's keeping rhythm. And then there's multiple objects in which you have to navigate. It's like a big puzzle. And then you also have to be in rhythm. And then you have to keep time. And then you have to, like, you're setting the pace for everybody else. And I've always been more of a rhythm kind of guy. James Hetfield is my rock idol. So those crunchy rhythms that he used to always play out there was the hard charging that I really liked. But in drums, but there's something that I've always wanted to do, and I will say it on this show. This is what I'm going to learn. Is I want to learn to play a nice funky groove, just a nice Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers style, just a little funky groove. That's because I want to just be able to see a drum set, sit down, play a couple, and then walk off and just be happy. So you heard it here first.
Nice.
We'll have to hold Sammy accountable, and we'll have to get him on the show and actually let him do some drumming for us. And Sammy, you'll have to show us that funky little track that you'll lay down.
I've been inspired.
That's your takeaway.
Yeah.
Well, also, Eddie, talking about instruments, another cool thing that Sammy and I have witnessed firsthand are your guitars. And you've developed a hobby, I guess you would say, of restoring guitars. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have a super love for that instrument, right? Super love. And I like old guitars. For some reason, I like old used guitars. To me, they have a soul, they have a story, right? It's almost like a breathing thing to me. And I've been restoring them. So I'll buy like parts and just restore and redo and restore and redo. Right now, it's kind of ridiculous. I have 40 guitars. It's a lot of projects, right? And it started too with COVID. When COVID started, like, okay, at night, I'm not going anywhere. What is like a hobby that I can do at night that's fun? and it's not going to drive my family insane because I'm not playing music super loud. Let's rebuild these guitars. It's a fun thing. It's understanding like the history of Fender and Gibson and all of those things, and then mishmashing like parts from one with parts of another it's just like magic to me.
Yeah, it's something that I'm sure that everybody has that knows you has seen, I guess, throughout the years, and it's part of your personality. But to me, that fits so well with you because when we've talked through business challenges that we've faced, or even like projects or people or whatever it may be, your mind I've always appreciated so much in the way that you can deconstruct and then remanufacture to find ways of looking at it differently, and then really seeing kind of not only root cause of problems, but then like some of the outside in scenarios that maybe the person hadn't thought about when they're presenting like an issue or a challenge that they're presenting. So I totally see that in your love for the piecing together, mix matching the sounds and learning the history of that too. Where does that come from? Because that really, that is you. When I think Eddie, that's what I think of as analytical, a listener, someone who's, you might not be the first to talk, but when you talk, it just has this weight because you listen. And that's what I've always valued about you.
I didn't always listen. So this was something that I had to practice, right? And it's the number one thing that I try to do today. Still, my mind is like everybody's mind, right? We're thinking a million things all the time, right? What can I say to look good in this conversation? I used to think that way, and now the way that I'm starting to think is I'm listening. How can I help the person who is talking? That was a big shift for me, because if you would have met me maybe 10 years ago-ish, I was a different person, right? I was just complete ego, just completely full of myself. And for a reason too, right? We talked a little bit about my upbringing in Brazil. So when I was around 18 years old, I got my very first job. So my very, very first job was because I spoke English super well, right? And my very first job was working for General Motors. And I was their IT support for their executive team. So imagine the big GM plant in Brazil. There's a small, tiny building where the executive team is, like the CEO who's making $200,000 a month, right? I was fixing his computer. So that was my very, 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 very first job. And it was super stressful as an 18, 19-year-old, where I'm standing in front of these super successful businessmen and in a high pressure situation. Remember, this was like the late 90s where your computer broke all the time. It's not like today, your computer breaks and you can just swap out, get a new computer. Like your computer broke, you were out of commission. So I was the guy who was trying to fix all their computers in these super high pressure situations. So I went through all of that. And at a very early age, I started leading teams. So when I was 23, I had my first team of 3 people. When I was 24, it grew to 40 people. And when I was 25, it grew to like 100 people.
Wow.
And you got to think about this as a kid, right? I was on top of the world, right? Nothing could stop me. My ego was just way up here. And there's a story, and hopefully people can learn too. Like my ego was here. I'm the best. There's nobody better than me. And one day I had a big presentation. I was living here in the States. I just had my daughter. I was recently married too. So just new couple, new kids, new pressures. That was the big thing too, right? Like the new pressures. Before I just needed to worry about myself. Now I need to worry about a family. I was in front of an executive team. There was about 30, 40 people in the room, and I had a presentation and I had a panic attack. And for those of you who've never had a panic attack, it was awful. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know how it happened. It just hit me to where I couldn't talk, I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was gonna die. So in front of people. So you take that ego and just do this, right? It just dropped completely, and now a lot has changed, right? One of the things that has helped me, at least, Melissa and what her teachings are for mindfulness have been spectacular. But just breathing, just like the pure act of breathing. Melissa spent a lot of time on this in your last podcast too. Just take the time to put your hand on your chest, put your hand on your belly, and breathe. It makes so much of a difference. So like my panic and worry and all that stuff gone, just because I breathe and take more of a let's listen, be analytical, and try to help. Those are the things that are going through my mind.
When you had that panic attack and you finally came back, what were some of the next steps that you took? Was it something you're like I have no idea what happened, I'm just going to pretend like I'm just going to move on? Or were you like, I've got to figure out what's going on? And what steps and what process did you start putting in place as a result of that moment?
I was a kid, right? So I ignored it. Yeah. So for a long time, I ignored it. So, and it was bad. Because I ignored it, I started having some allergic reactions too. So my lips would swell up, my eyes would swell up, my legs would swell up, and this would happen. And I didn't understand why. People would say it's food. Nope, it's not food. I did the overall allergy test, the one that they poke 500 holes in your back. I did another one where they poked a whole bunch of holes in my arm. Couldn't find out what it was, right? It was stress. I went to a doctor and she said, it's stress. You need to do something about it. You can either take medication or you can meditate. So that's when kind of my love for meditation came to be. And it was such a simple thing, right? I would be weirdly enough, right? I would be embarrassed to breathe. I don't know why, right? I would be embarrassed to breathe in front of people. And now it's just a part of my everyday. It's just taking a breath, right? You have a big presentation, rub your hands. You're here in the present moment. You don't have to worry about everything that's going through your mind. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's huge, Eddie. And one of the things that comes to my mind when people talk about meditation, I think a lot of people have different definitions or it means different things to them. What are some of the practices that you do today that maybe you started way back when that are part of your routine? Or what are things that you do consistently that gives you that value, that helps you just to calm, relax, and be present?
I love that question. I have my morning routine. I don't break my morning routine, and things will come, and sometimes I do have to break it, but I try not, regardless of where I'm at, what state I'm in, I don't break that morning routine. So I wake up every day, 5:30, I go to the gym, spend 15 minutes in the sauna, and I come back home and I'm ready for the workday. I cannot work if I don't do those things. So I'm a different person if I don't do those things. So and then now with the pandemic, it's coming home and making the bed. That's important. It's the first task of the day, right? So making the bed is important. The meditation piece, sauna, in case y'all don't use it, it's incredible. So the very first time I experienced something like this was I was 13 years old. This was back in Brazil too. I was in a sauna for a really long time, and then I jumped into a cold pool. It's a feeling that is, it takes your body a long time to adjust, but it's a feeling that's incredible. Afterwards, it's a feeling that's incredible. So I try to replicate this almost every single day. So it's 15 minutes in a really hot sauna, and then when I go to take a shower, it's a polar bear shower, the coldest setting. So I have not taken a warm shower in a long time. It's the coldest setting. But after that, you just feel completely alive and in the moment. And I do this every single day, every day.
Man, I love hearing you say that. There's so much research that's really starting to come out that talk about the benefits of sauna, just like you mentioned, and just for the overall well-being of your immune system and just what it does inside your body. And then when you talk about the cold showers, that's something that I know, if people are familiar with Tony Robbins or Tim Ferriss, I know there are people that have pretty big platforms that are well known for just speaking exactly what you just shared, the benefits of like immersing yourself in that cold water, especially after you've heated up. And I can't quote the science behind it, but there's so much research I know that's coming out now that talks about how much of a benefit it is for you. I will admit, Eddie, that I've been hesitant to start taking the cold showers just because, like anything, you fear what you don't take action against. I've got to just take the step and do it, because now the more I'm learning about it, I'm learning the benefits. I'm peeling back that wall that's kind of holding me back from doing it. So that may be something that I need to make a goal and start putting that as a practice of my life too. I love that you do that.
It helps bring me back to the present moment, right? Because we're in our heads all the time, thinking about things all the time. When you're in a really, really hot sauna, and then you take a really, really cold shower, you're not going to think about anything. You're going to think about that water. And I try to do this every day. And you would imagine that my body would get used to it after doing it for so many years. It has not. Every day is still just a mini challenge, a mini struggle. But it's fun. It's a fun little mini challenge and struggle that I do every morning, and I feel great afterwards. I really do. And then on the drive home from the gym, I do my breathing exercises, and I just when it's the work day, I am ready to just be productive and attack. Like I'm just ready.
There was a study that came out, and it was showing that there was a 40% all-cause 40% drop in all-cause mortality when people saunaed 5 times a day. I'm sorry, 5 times a week. So 5 times a week, 40% drop in all causes of death.
Oh yeah, 10 years. So I think it was like a Swedish study.
Yes.
Where it added like 10 years to your life, the people that did sauna.
So here's a tip. And I'd love your tips on this too. So since Greg admitted he's trying to take the plunge, if you will. So
we're considering taking the plunge.
Yeah. So a tip of mine. So I did the same thing when I was younger. We used to go to this little water park down in Central Texas, from South Texas, and we would go and we would get in the hot tubs, and then they had these mushrooms that would spout cold water over the top. This park was called Schlitterbahn down in New Braunfels, Texas. So we would hop in there, and then it would always be a challenge to see who can like go from there and then race over to the cold and just take the plunge, because people would just drop after 3 or 4 or 5 times. People would just do it. But that's what it would just invigorate you for the rest of the day. So about, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, I started doing that, right? Turning down the shower just a little bit. But I started making a very conscious effort on my birthday this year, the last month, to start doing it and start taking cold showers again. But what I do, Greg, is here's a tip for the listeners. I take my normal shower, so hot, sudsy, whatever. And then as I'm rinsing off, I just slowly dial it back. And that's like, I'm getting the shampoo out of my hair, but I'm just slowly messing with it. Till finally it's like, okay, it's like really cold and like it's time to get out. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to crank it down. And then I just crank it down about another quarter turn. And I typically let it hit the back of my head. And for me, my standpoint, my understanding of this is saying that inflammation is a certain cause for almost all causes of mortality in your life. So I like to say, if there's any type of inflammation in my brain or in my head cavity space, I want to eliminate that more than just like in my bicep or my legs, my back. So I try and let it run over my head first to like cool the brain. That's at least how it works for me. And so it's worked for me. I do it. I've been doing it now for the last month and a half again, or the last month, I should say. But that's my cheat. So I'd like to hear you try it, Greg.
Yeah.
I used to do it that way too, by the way.
Yeah, it's probably a good way to start out, right? And just at least start getting kind of the habit in place, and kind of take that that first initial step. Um,
But I want to ask you real quick, but Greg, before we go on to one thing, you mentioned something there, that something that you have mentioned, you've talked a lot about, you and I have talked a lot about, but is your health and your well-being. You touched on it earlier with the whole aspect of mental health, as far as, meditation and routines and all that. But then you talked about fasting too, and you said you're currently fasting. So I'd love to just get some more backstory on your personal health and wellness, and because I know that's a very important thing to you.
It is very much. So you know how in my description it said pizza lover?
I was about to bring
We're
that up.
Yep.
I can't eat pizza.
Oh, yeah.
I love pizza, but I can't eat it. So bread and cheese, it destroys my stomach. So Sammy, my story was similar to yours, right? But it was a little bit different. When I was 12, 10, 11, 12, 13, I was on the very, very, very heavy side. So as a child growing up, I was on the heavy side. And then when I moved to Brazil and ate rice and beans every day, I lost all my weight. But exercising and just if you feel good with yourself, like everything around you will just work. Like your relationships, your work. Like if you feel healthy and you feel good, and it's hard, right? It goes back to my morning routine. I go to the gym every day and I challenge myself. And I go through waves too, right? So let's talk about some of the waves that I go through. I'll do super heavy lifting. And I'm talking about just crazy, crazy, crazy heavy. I don't try it anymore, but I used to be able to deadlift about 500 pounds,
Wow.
600. Yeah, and it was fun. So I go through just really heavy lifting phases where I eat a lot. And then I go through just lots of exercises, faster, less weight, and where I try to eat a little bit less. So I'm going through the eat a little bit less phase right now. And then fasting, I wish I was a little bit better about it too. So this fast that I'm doing right now, I was supposed to do it March of last year.
Oh yeah.
So I'm doing it right now, but it's interesting because fasting is challenging, right? It's not easy for your body to go without food because you consistently think about food. By fasting, this is what I feel about fasting. It's a reset, right? It's a reset button. We're cleaning up everything that's in your system, right? We're getting all the toxins out. We're getting all the food out, and we're just gonna drink water. Reset button, right? And it is very, very difficult in the beginning. Day 1, 2 are probably the worst, and then your body just like it gets used to it. It's a weird feeling. You get used to not going without food because you don't need 4 meals a day, right? There's a lot of studies that talk about this. You don't need 4 meals a day. I feel good about it, but I wish I was a little bit better. Sammy, you do a lot of fasting. Tell us a little bit more because you do intermittent fasting too,
Yeah.
right? It's not.
I picked up intermittent fasting. Gosh, it's been probably close to 3 years now, at least. And this is it's become just a thing now with me. It's almost like a religious thing for me. And if I don't do it, there have been times where I've challenged myself or I've kind of beaten myself up if I didn't do it. So what I would do is I don't do that anymore. Actually, I'm at one with missing from time to time, but almost exclusively I eat starting at noon. And then I have dinner. The latest I typically have dinner is about 8 o'clock, and that's pretty late for me. I eat dinner with my kids, so we eat early. But that's my eating window typically. And what I like to do, speaking of resets, is that on Mondays, because I don't do the intermittent fast on Sundays, I do it Monday through Saturday. But on Sundays, I like to have breakfast with the kids or, whatever it may be. And then typically on Sundays, if you lounge around, I've had a tough week mentally physically put my body through a lot of stress and strain and exercise or whatever that may be. Plus, I typically ride mountain bikes on the weekends. So my body is like craving like just calories at that point in time. And so like on Sundays I'll eat, but then on Mondays I love a 24-hour fast. So on Sunday night when I finish, I love to reset that button on Mondays and do a 24-hour fast. I'll eat. That's when I'll eat a little bit later. Like I'll have a very small meal on Monday nights around like 8:30 or so or whatever, and then just pick it up on the next day and kind of go. But I like to do that reset. One thing that I found is that it really, it just clears you out for the week. Like you're just okay, you're ready. Like you're good to go. You're in a different mindset. That a cold shower and all these little tips and tricks and all this together. It's when you hit the ground running on Monday, you're ready for the challenge. And I love that you mentioned about the making your bed, because I do that every single day. I make at least my side of the bed, because my wife sometimes sleeps in later than me. So I make my side of the bed, and it's something I challenge everyone to do as well too. This is important.
So why do you make it? I know why I make it, but why do you make it, Sammy?
So growing up, I never did. I never made my bed. And honestly, I used a quilt, or like a sheet and then a quilt. And then I got rid of the sheet. So I would just do the quilt. And so it was just a quilt laying on my bed all the time. I came home one time, it was in high school. I came home one time and I just noticed it just looked bad. And I remember I saw the vacuum cleaner lines on the ground. So I was like, somebody vacuumed my room. My mom must have vacuumed my room, but she didn't make my bed. And I remember thinking that was her way of telling me, like, hey, like, have a little bit more respect for what I'm doing for you. And at least that's what I felt. She probably just didn't want to make my bed, but I was like, wow, she went through the trouble of cleaning up after me. And the least I could do was at least something that I just used was to make my bed. So then in college, I started doing it as well. And then even to this day, I do it. And my kids, I had them doing it all the time when they were on the smaller twin bed, but now they're in a full size, so they can't reach. So I make their bed every single morning because they sleep together. So I make their bed every single morning, just kind of get it nice and neat. They have like 1,000 pillows, so I don't do all those. But a couple of pillows I put in there too. But I just do it to, number one, get a task completed in the morning and know that that is done. And one of my favorite things in life is when you go to a hotel and you don't pull the covers back, you just pick up enough of the sheet that you can and just slide in, and you're nice and tucked in. That's one of my favorite things. So I was like, why don't I do this at home? So I tuck in my sheets, it's hospital tuck, and I do the same thing. I slide right in. So making my bed's not that hard, but I just slide it on my side.
It's inviting.
I also think there's a psychological aspect of it too, that when you have your bed made and you have your home or wherever you're staying in order, and you do your best to alleviate clutter and trash, it just does something for your psyche, and you just feel more relaxed, you feel more at peace, you're more organized. And so I'm just like you, Sammy. It's one of the first things I do every day. And for me, it's that dopamine hit of, man, I got my first major task done, made my bed, and then I love when I come home. And I live by myself. So there's days where I will get up, first thing I'll do is make my bed, and I won't even leave my apartment, but it still gets done. It's ingrained in my head. It's a habit that I'll never break.
It's inviting, right? Like you see that bed beautifully organized. You want to go back to it when it's time to go to sleep.
Right. That's a good point.
And so, Sammy, the hotel thing, when I started going to hotels, I fell in love with hotel towels. So in my house, I only have, for the rest of my life, only have white towels. Just like
I have one towel that I got at a Christmas party that one of our former teachers, when I used to work with Vogel, with Greg, we had a Christmas party, and she brought one of these softest, biggest, luxurious white towels that we've ever had. And there's only one in my house, but I should buy more of them because it's so luxurious that my wife and I don't fight over it by any means, but the first one that grabs it out of the closet gets the white fluffy towel.
Nice.
So Eddie, you said that you can't eat pizza, but do you cheat and have it every now and then and just suffer the repercussions?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes. It's my favorite. Pizza is, I don't know why, like out of every single food that has ever existed, pizza is just the best. And Brazilian pizza, oh my God, they have a Brazilian pizza that's called Portuguesa, and it's got salami, it's got peas, it's got boiled eggs and onions. I know it doesn't sound like the
Oh,
best combination, and
it sounds,
ham.
it sounds
And
so
ham.
good.
Good. It's one of my favorites. Like Brazilian pizza is legit. And the big thing about pizza for me too, this is really important. It's gotta be wood, like the wood stove. I don't like the electric oven pizzas. I can
Okay.
tell.
Do
Yeah.
you have a favorite pizza place here locally or even nationally?
Oh man. I always
We're
remember
throwing
that joke.
fastballs at you, man.
No, I always remember that joke in The Office where Michael Scott, he's in New York and he's like, I'm going to my favorite pizza place, this hole in the wall. And it's a Sbarro.
Oh yeah.
Um, no, I don't. I love every single pizza ever. It's unbelievable. I really do.
There was an article I read. Oh, I wish I could tell you what publication it came from, but the author was attempting to define why everyone loves pizza, right? I mean, there's no one that's like, I hate pizza.
Mhm.
And he actually interviewed, some, I want the throwaway word, scientists and researchers, but he came to the conclusion that it literally is the perfect addicting food for a human being because it combines all the things that we crave. So it's salty, it's sweet, it's got a hard texture, it's got a kind of a cheesy, mushy texture, and then it's got meat. And so you put all those things together, and it's the perfect addicting concoction of food. And I just remember being kind of reading the article and going, yep, he's right.
Damn it. As I'm fasting, you're describing like the perfect. I don't know if you're seeing my face right now. There's a bead of
You're
sweat
starting to
coming
sweat
out.
right now.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds delicious.
How long of a fast are you going on?
I'm going to try to do it until next Sunday, so 7 days.
7 days. Woo. And so on this 7 days, you can drink water. What else
I'm
can you
only
consume?
drinking. So this is the first time that I'm doing just water. I used to do water and coffee, and I love coffee too, right?
Yeah.
But I cut the coffee, and that's the most difficult part because it'll give you a headache in the beginning of it because you're taking away that caffeine from your body. You get a headache. So the water fast is one of the first times that I've done it, and it's been challenging, but I feel good. Like right now, I feel good.
Yeah,
In the beginning,
you're halfway through. You're coming up over the hump.
yeah.
I think the longest I've done was a 50-hour. I think it was 50-hour, and I finally I tried not to miss meals with my family, like with my girls and stuff like that. So it's I try at least sit there through it with them, and have like this is I'm cheating a little bit on mine, but like I'm not fasting right now, but I've got Topo Chico, so sparkling water is always good and gives you
Yeah.
the bubbles. And coffee is my cheat because then I just drink a ton of coffee and don't think about anything else but laser focus on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um,
The so Topo Chico and the soda water, that's my treat.
mhm.
And this week, my wife is an amazing human being, but also an amazing cook. Just incredible. The food that she makes is amazing. So this week she made chicken fettuccine on Monday, and like you, I sit down with my family and have dinner. On Monday I was fasting. So as they were having dinner, I was enjoying my water.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Man.
Well, Eddie, this is the part of the show where we start hitting the home stretch.
Yeah.
So we're going to pepper you with a few more questions, and quite honestly, some of these you've answered just along our conversation. So I may challenge you to think of some additional examples that
Okay.
you might be able to share. But we ask all of our guests three what we consider growth questions. And one is more tangible, one is more philosophical. So I'll start with the tangible question, then Sammy will follow up with the philosophical one. But in terms of growth, can you share some actionable tips or methods or routines or even lessons learned that have benefited you personally in terms of self-development and personal growth that you think would be of benefit to our audience?
Yeah.
So all the routines and structures or actionable tips.
Yeah, I'll do a recommendation. So I started listening to a guru. His name is Sadhguru. Have you both heard of him?
Tell me a little bit more about who he is, because I think I may know who you're
I
talking
think so
about.
too.
Yeah, he's a yogi, and he
Uh-huh.
does a lot of speeches throughout the world. And
Long gray beard.
I'm sorry.
Long gray beard.
Yes,
Okay,
he's got
I think I know who you're talking about.
a white beard. Incredible, just incredible. Some of his things are a little bit out there, right? He said that he doesn't sleep or doesn't need to sleep. But I think that's a little bit that's a little bit of a home stretch, and he spends weeks in the woods. That's another little bit of a home stretch. But his overall the way that he explains your mind is incredible. It's just incredible, and it's nuggets of information too that I grasp just because he's extremely intelligent but extremely just simple at the same time. And that's the biggest thing about him, just simplicity. The biggest things that he touches upon is the overall kind of like our psychological process, which is all the stuff that's in our head, right? So in our head, as humans, we've evolved to just incredible mental capabilities, right? We think about things all the time. And the two things that the way he segments things is memory versus imagination. So memory is you thinking about all the stuff in the past and all the stuff that happened with you, right? And imagination is the future, is you thinking about everything that's going to happen with you. None of the creatures in the world today go through that. It's just humans. And we're stuck sometimes in our memory and imagination, future and past. We're stuck in these two dimensions that we don't have any control over, right? Because it's not existent. It's not the world that we're in today. Versus like the existence, kind of like the cosmos, the world that it is. And the world is fascinating. So an example that he gave is the sun. So if I tell you the sun came up today, it's like, okay, whatever. The sun comes up every day. But if the sun didn't come up, like imagine it didn't come up in 18 hours, everything that you know would be dead. Like just he talks about just paying attention to the things that are right now in the present moment.
I love that.
Big, I really like it. Again, there's some concepts that I don't necessarily, and that's the beauty of it too. I don't necessarily agree with some of his concepts, but some of them are just phenomenal. He just throws some nuggets of information out there that is just phenomenal. So that's one thing that I would recommend as a growth. Sadhguru,
And you said
great
that's
speeches.
Is it a podcast, or how do you access his show or his interviews?
So I started off with, and Melissa introduced this to me as well. They're meditation apps, right? Mm-hmm. And I would listen to one of the meditation apps. It was Headspace, mm-hmm. And I started off like everybody else, right, on the meditation app where it was just guided meditation, right? Breathe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pay attention to X, Y, Z. And then all of a sudden, I heard one of his speeches, and they're all recorded in India. Some of them are really old too. So you get kind of like this digital music where the sound quality is perfect, but then they throw in like his speech, and it sounds like they recorded it on an old cassette recorder. But yeah, I heard it on Headspace for the first time, and then on YouTube. So look him up on YouTube. And I like, it's called Sync Mind. It's Sync Mind Sadhguru, where they combine meditation music with his speech, which I just love. And it's funny because the way that Google and YouTube and Facebook works, it just throws a new video for me every day. So I open my TV in the morning, click on it, and YouTube just will show me a brand new Sync Mind video from Sadhguru, and I try to listen to one every day. Just great concepts. Definitely listen to it.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think I might have seen one of his things once, but I'm definitely going to dig into that too, because that's in one of my intentions this year is to spend more time in the meditation world, because I've fallen off that. I used to either work out or meditate, and now it's like I work out or go to work. So I want to get that meditation back. So thank you for that one. So question number 2 is more the philosophical side. And so, can you share some wisdom that has benefited you over the years? So maybe something different than what you've received recently, but maybe that's benefited you from maybe your childhood, your past, or whatever that may be.
Some wisdom that's benefited me over the years. We talked a little bit about this too, in our business group. Setting your intention for the day. I'm a big fan of this. And when I do, it's typically 1 or 2 words. So in the beginning of the morning, I think about all the different things that I have to do in that day. And then I pick what my intention is and I try to stick to it. And when I see that I'm deviating from it, I come back to it. So for example, today, my intention for the day was effective communication. This was because we're here today, right? This was because I had my most difficult meetings today. On Wednesdays, I do all of my client meetings where I'm going through 40 different tickets, right? And giving our clients updates on all of those tickets and working through their issues. So to me, today was effective communication, right? This is the intention. If I see that we're deviating, then I'll try to come back, right? I use other words like productivity. So today I'm going to get stuff done. I'm going to get my task list done. Check. Friday I have the day off, so it's fun. That's the word. Like if it deviates from fun, I'm not going to do it, right? I look at other people too. If somebody needs me, one of the intentions that I said is to be supportive, right? So for that day, I'm going to be supportive, and I'm going to be supportive towards the people that need me. So it's an easy way for you to plan out what you're doing for today, right? You plan out your intention and just, it works. It's weird, but it just works. When you see that you're kind of deviating, you just remember, hey, today's effective communication. Go back. And I had some challenges today with our clients. I had to communicate some difficult things to them, but I think I did it well because I kept kind of that mindset. Tomorrow will be it's productivity. So it's ticket resolving day. It's heads down. How much work can I do? No meetings. I have no. So that's the other thing too. Big calendar blocks. So I'm lucky enough where I can structure my day, and a lot of us can, but a lot of us can't, right? Like things are thrown at you. So I have calendar blocks. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is meetings, right? I have to be in a meeting. It's going to be in those 3 days. Thursday and Friday, no meetings. My calendar is blocked. This is when I'm going to get work done. And sometimes it's hard. It's the multitasking part, right? So today's Wednesday and I was all these meetings today, back to back, 8 a.m. all the way to right now, right? Meeting. And I see my inbox just doing this. Sammy, I think you too, you got the inbox 0 thing, right? Where you don't like it. Yeah. I see my inbox doing this and I can't deviate, right? I'm not going to answer all of those things right now because my thing is effective communication. I'm in these meetings. I'm going to pay attention to the meetings. And tomorrow it's productivity. I'm not in any meetings. I'm going to attack these tickets like there's no tomorrow. Just boom, get all that work done. And I'm lucky enough to, I'm a project manager, right? So I have to structure these things. And I do it for other people too. But a lot of people, they're not able to do it. Even for me too, even though I have the structure, the thing that is difficult is interruptions, right? Interruptions will always come and you just have to you have to accept it. right? Melissa talked about this. I think you, Sammy, you were doing your breathing exercises in your room and somebody walked in, right? And Melissa said, just continue with your breathing exercises with that person in the room. Like, just know that the interruptions are going to come. Don't try not to, and it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Try not to be mad or sad or angry about those interruptions and just keep going with your routine.
I love it. I'm actually going to set my intention word tonight for tomorrow, because
Nice.
tomorrow, and I want, because you're here, is because you just inspired me. But tomorrow is all about learning. I have my first full staff meeting or full team meeting where I'm the new guy with all of the head people. Like, everyone above me is going to be there, and I'm going to be introduced and like, hey, here's the new guy. And I don't have to do anything else. I mean, I talked to my boss, and he was like, I just want you to be there to get some time. So I'm like, I'm just going to learn. I'm just going to soak it all in. So learning is my word for tomorrow.
Nice. Listen in, learn. I love it.
I like look, listen, learn. That's one of my phrases that I follow.
Now, Eddie, the third question is a little bit of a unique take on an old question. So often people are asked if you could go back in time, so we're talking about the past, and give yourself advice, what would you do? Well, that's not our question for you. Our question is going to be going into the imagination, like you just talked about, the future. So what if you today, Eddie, had a chance to speak with yourself 10 years from now? What advice would you give your future self?
Everything will be okay. That's it. So when I was a little kid in Brazil, it was, like I told you guys, it was super tough because I didn't speak English. I felt like I was an outsider. I didn't speak Portuguese. I felt like I was an outsider, right? It was challenging times. And I used to think about, like, what does my future look like? And today I'm kind of in the future, and if I could go back, right, it would be, everything will be okay. And I think it would be the same thing that I would say to my future self. That's it. I just live in the now. Like, it's a good, and I knew you guys would ask this because you asked the past question to other to the other podcast folks. Yeah.
I love it. And Eddie, it just goes right along with everything you've talked about the importance of being in the present and not worrying about the past and not stressing, or excuse me, not being depressed about the past and not stressing over the future. And
that's why I struggled with that question. I don't know if you noticed, like I struggled with the question because I almost don't want to answer. Does that mean I don't want to answer because I just and this is, again, it's new. It's just, how do we live in the now? How do we just enjoy everything that's happening today instead of thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow or what happened yesterday?
I think it's an amazing answer, Eddie.
I love it.
Very cool. Right. Well, this is my personal favorite part of the show. So this is where Sammy and I, and Eddie, I think you said you were going to participate as well.
Yeah.
So we're going to come up with our, and this is also the hardest part of the show, the 3 key takeaways. And I've been trying to write down, I've got like at least, that I actually starred, I've got like 12 or 13. Nice. So I narrow them down to 3. But Sammy, who's going first this episode, you or me?
How about we ping pong this time? We can go back and forth.
Okay.
All right. So
I'll let you lead off.
Okay, I'll go first. And I was writing so fast that I scribble because I write in cursive. So sometimes it's hard to read my handwriting. But one of the things that you mentioned is something that I subscribe to a lot, which is why I had a big cheesy smile. But I love that other people have this mindset too. And this totally goes with you, is how can I help the person that I am talking to? And I know Greg did me the honor of this, which I still like am kind of bashful about it. But Greg wrote a blog one time about one of my favorite things to do is anytime that I leave a conversation with somebody, it's second nature now. I mean, it's this is who I am. It's who I've aspired to be, is that person that can help. So I leave almost all conversations with, hey, well, if you ever need anything, let me know how I can help. Or if you need something, how can I help? What do you need from me now? Or what do you need later? So I love that you have that as your phrase. So that's one of my key takeaways. And I think if more people did that, that I think that we would see a lot of overall improvement to life, or their life in general.
Yeah, and my first takeaway is a little bit along those same lines, but I like, Eddie, how you stressed the point that you learned early on, that to truly help others, you don't have to be the top leader. Mm-hmm. Anybody can be a leader, and anybody can help people. And so to wait until you achieve some type of position or level of authority before you actually start implementing how you can help people is just not the right approach. So I like how you stressed that anybody has the opportunity to help people, and you make it an intentional part of your life. So that was a big takeaway for me.
And then my next one is remember to breathe. And you actually put your hands in an interesting way earlier. And I don't know if you meant to do that, but it gave me a visual cue and a reminder.
Oh, I do like this all the time.
Yeah.
The praying hands are awesome.
Yeah.
It's just a good feeling.
But that was one of the good ones too, because Apple Watch will remind you from time to time too. And I don't know what settings that makes it do it. Like, I don't know if you actually need to breathe, but that's just a great reminder too, that anytime just take a step back and take a breath is a great thing to remember.
I don't break my morning routine. I love how emphatically you said that, because it just shows how important setting the tone for your entire day, how important that time is. And so many of these great actionable tips that we've talked about, I feel like they occur very early on in that morning routine, and then that allows you to continue them throughout the day. And I'm somebody that preaches the importance of a morning routine, yet it's very, very easy for me to get knocked off my consistency. And I can tell you there's a noticeable difference between when I hit that morning routine versus when I wake up late and I just half-ass it and just start the day in a hurried rush. And my tone, my day, everything is different. And so I love how you stress the importance of the morning routine.
And I had like Greg said, a ton of them, but my last one that I want to leave with is not something that you necessarily said that people should do, but it's something that you said in when you were setting your intentions for the day, that on Friday that you were going to set intention to have fun, and that if it wasn't fun, you weren't going to do it. And obviously sticking to your routine there. But I love that, because I don't think a lot of people do that. I think that that's lost on some people. That, yeah, you may have your hobbies, you may have your things that are exciting to you too, but when's the last time you took a day and just said, I'm going to have fun all day long? And I love that.
Remember, there will be disruptions, right? It's not always easy.
Right.
So an example is just, I'm going through this fast right now, right? Friday, I don't know how I'm going to feel, but I'm still going to try to have fun.
Yeah.
and the morning routine, not breaking it, Greg, was even though I'm going through the fasting and I have very little energy, still went to the gym. It was difficult and challenging, but I still did it.
Love it. Well, Eddie, my third takeaway is actually two combined into one, so I'm cheating a little bit, but I wanted to get them both in there. One, I love how you shared the story about being at the front row of a concert with 200,000 people. And to get there, you had to show up early, and you were prepared with your bag of Cheetos, or your bag of chips. And I think so much in life, these big things that we want to accomplish, it's showing up early and it's preparation. And I think that that's a funny story that just really kind of hits that point home. And then I also just love kind of talking about hobbies and fun. I love that you shared as a child, you loved listening to music. And then as you started growing older, you started playing music, you started playing in bands, you started going to these concerts, you started going by yourself just because it made it so much easier to really focus and really just get tuned in with the show. And then as you grew into an adult, you continue to have that as a big part of your life. Fast forward to today, you're recording an album. And so you have taken something that you love and you have intentionally made it a part of the seasons of your life throughout your life. And I think that's something that's inspiring. And I hope people think about their lives and they think about the things they love to do and they prioritize ways to make sure they do them. And that's just such a great, cool example of what you're doing. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Thank you. So those are the 6 takeaways.
6 takeaways.
Yes, three each.
Yeah, I have some, and mine are super simplistic too, because I just like to keep it simple. Making your kid's bed, Sammy, that was a waking moment for me, because I do it every day for myself, but I never do it for my kids because I want them to have that same realization that I had of the importance of making the bed, right? But I never did it for them. And maybe doing it for them, because my kids don't do it. Like they just don't do it, even if I ask. So making it for them, I think is a way to just show like how important it is. I like the 24-hour fast, Sammy, as well. So doing eating a whole bunch, it's kind of feasting, right? You do your Sunday feast and then 24 hours on Monday. Do you do this every week, by the way? Is that
almost consistently? Yeah.
Wow.
I think it was this Monday, because I started the new job this Monday, that I didn't. I was on my way to it just naturally. And then I remember walking out to refill my water, and a protein bar was there. And I was like, oh, I'll grab a protein bar for later, when I break my fast. And I just ate it. I was in a meeting and I kind of ate it, and I was like, oh, I broke it. So that rarely happens, but I typically do it at least once. If I don't hit on Monday, then I'll try and do it on Tuesday.
Nice. And then my last one, believe it or not, I've never listened to Kenny Rogers. I gotta listen to Kenny Rogers, Greg. My wife talks about him all the time.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised if you listen to it with an open mind, which I know you will. But I will encourage you to seek one song in particular, and that's called "Love Will Turn You Around."
Okay.
And so that was the song that was my all-time favorite song as a young child. It was my first favorite song. And in fact, when Kenny passed away this year, I actually recorded a short video of me playing that song on guitar and singing it as a tribute to my first concert experience in Kenny Rogers, The Gambler. So check it out.
Nice. I will. Yeah, I love it. Love Will Turn You Around by Kenny Rogers.
There you go.
Got it.
Well, Eddie, I know I can speak for Greg, but he will speak to all of this is amazing. It was fun. It was exactly what we wanted, and we just scratched the surface of the music stories. And we could just do one just strictly on concerts and music in general, but we wanted to really show who you were as a person, because that's the thing that and Greg, and I know everybody has always valued about you, is that it's your breadth and depth of knowledge, your demeanor, your the way you listen to people, the way you are intentional, all of this. It's really important. I think it's lost on a lot of people that don't do that. So I hope that our listeners and our viewers can see that someone that is self-admitted didn't, and said, I wanted to have fun, I didn't always listen, is one of your quotes that you gave me. I hope that people, even in that mindset, can see that you can still maybe change the way you are a little bit and improve upon things, or actively work towards it. So, but for me, it's been a blast. I've enjoyed this. I will go out on a limb and say that this will not be our last show that we have with you too. And I can't wait to see you again. I can't wait to jam with you. And I really look forward to seeing how your hobbies increase and how things are going. So please, let's continue to check in with each other often.
For sure. Hey, it's a blessing, guys. It really, really, really is. I'm a super private guy. I don't like talking. I not just private. I'm shy and I'm an introvert. So it's difficult for me to go through things like this. And like Sammy, you're the marketing guy, right? So your social media is amazing. If you look at my stuff, I have very few friends. And if you're not my friend, I don't share stuff with you. So if you look at my Facebook, my Instagram, all that stuff is just completely locked down, right? And if you, how fun, right? Have you guys ever Googled yourselves? Yes.
Yeah.
When I Google myself, one of the very first pictures that shows up is of me and Sammy here at my house. Yeah, just Google it later and you'll see it. It's one of the very first pictures that show up. So having a recording where we talk about some of the
Fair enough. It's right there.
You found it?
I did.
Having a recording where I talk about some of the things that are important to me, and you sharing this with your audience is a blessing. So just thank you. And again, I'm a big fan of the show. You had some amazing guests, right? I listened to some of the guests and I'm like, what am I going to say in this thing? Even my wife asked, right? Like, what are you going to say? Even my daughter, remember I told you, I listened to the show with my daughter and she was like, what are you going to say?
Well, I think what you said, Eddie, has been awesome. And this is one of the funnest conversations we've had. And Sammy's exactly right. I think we just barely just scratched the surface of just some of the things that you're passionate about. I'd really love to have you come back on and talk even more specifically about some of the challenges, especially with your mental health, that panic attack, and how meditation and those things have really, really helped you to grow. And that could be a fun conversation for us to have Melissa come on too, and the four of us actually talk. So
I would love
that.
She changed my life, guys. Like, I don't know about you guys, but her influence and the things that she's taught me personally, that lady changed my life. So that would be awesome.
Super cool. Yeah. So we're definitely going to have you back on, Eddie, because like we said, we started the show, man, you're one of the coolest guys we know. And man, you're just one of those people that when you're around Eddie, man, you just feel good. It's just as simple as that, man. You're just an awesome guy, and Sammy and I think the world of you. So once again, thank you for coming on, and especially knowing that this isn't something that's necessarily in your comfort zone. That means even more that you did this. And man, I think people are going to love listening to you talk on this episode. And I'm excited to hear what your daughter thinks, because I think she's going to be impressed too.
I hope so. Let's see.
Well, very cool. Well, as we wrap things up, Sammy and I have to do our shameless plug. So make sure you go and check out our website at www.livetpg.com, where you can find additional episodes of this, The Pursuit of Growth show. You can read our blog, and you can purchase our book, The Pursuit of Growth, which kind of started this whole journey that Sammy and I have been taking. So once again, www.livetpg.com.
Eddie, thank you again. And if there's anything you want to plug, please feel free to plug it right now as well.
Nope, there is nothing. Just live in the present moment, people.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, let's shut this one down. Thank you again to Greg. Thank you again, Eddie. Thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to everyone that has supported us along the way. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Live TPG show. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Peace.